Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming and welcome to the Conservation Board meeting for March 5th. We'll call our meeting at 6:31 and we have a few items to review tonight. We'll start with the 7200 Rawson Road minor subdivision. Before we actually get started, I'll introduce our board. Myself, Pat Coleman as chair, Tim Norman, Pete Paris, and Matt Madison. And for this project, we have applicant is requesting approval to subdivide 18.5 acres. 22.5 acre tax parcel, remaining 4 acres to this the existing light industrial building. I believe we have some folks from the neighborhood in attendance tonight. David. Marcia, welcome. And gentleman from BME.
Yes.
It's Ryan.
Yep.
Ryan. So I guess we'll start, Ryan, if you don't mind just giving us an overview and thanks for that.
Sure. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Ryan Destro from BME Associates. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Rawson Community LLC. This application is strictly just for a 2-lot subdivision. In December, the town board approved rezoning of the parcel to a PDD consisting of a 4-acre lot containing the existing light industrial building, and then the remainder of the property, the 18.5 acres, would be reserved for the residential portion of the PDD, which would consist of 59 townhome lots. This 2-lot subdivision is strictly for the applicant to close on the property, close on the residential portion, and then subsequently we'll submit a subdivision application for the 18.5 acre parcel. So again, this is strictly just putting a line on a plan at this point, creating a 2-lot subdivision. No improvements are proposed at this time. It's just strictly a 2-lot subdivision so that the applicant can close on the 18.5 acres that they're looking to develop in the future. That's it.
Seems straightforward. Any insight on closing dates? I mean, it's obviously pending this application, but
Correct. So I'm not aware of the exact date, but it's always as soon as it can be. So that's sooner than later. Yes.
Thoughts, comments, the board so far?
Just drawing a line on the map this time.
Yeah. Let's just this time. Okay, but nothing, just. Obviously you came here tonight, live in the community. If you don't mind, we did review some of the comments from the neighborhood. Share your questions, comments, concerns. Sounds like obviously at this point, we're at an application standpoint, split up the parcel into 2 pieces, which is what our board is going to kind of comment on tonight. But given that you're here, I'd love to give you some time just to voice your concerns.
I'd be curious to know, part of the parking lot is in village. Does that go with the 4 acres? Is that included?
So
in
the 4 acres are in the town. The overall 22.5 acre parent parcel is a portion that's within the town. There is a small portion that's within the village, but that is one entire, like the entire overall parcel is 23 something acres. So that there is no separate parcel or separate lot for the village. It's the entire parcel encompasses both lands in the village, for the town and in the village. There's 2 separate tax account numbers for taxes, but there's no actual physical lot. So when the 18.5 acres are subdivided out, the remainder of that parcel, including the light industrial building, will be one entire lot that would encompass lands in both the town and the village.
The 18.5 would be entirely
In the town.
Yeah.
Just so that you can know what we're speaking about, there's a picture on the screen there. Thank you.
That's what he's speaking about.
It's the kind of triangle in the upper right is the village.
That's another adjacent parcel. The village is that upside down L piece.
Okay. Part that's marked.
Or I'm sorry, it's, there's the line, you can
Yeah.
see the dash line, it's just to the right of that, or the east is the village.
It's mighty close to the building, doesn't it? That cutoff.
There is no cutoff, it's all one parcel.
Well. Thanks. May I ask, do you have any plans to renovate that building in any way? I tell you why I ask. The north part of it, west part, I mean, has a door, some windows, and I've never been around the back, to be honest with you. But the other part is just, there's nothing. I mean, so is that whole building planned just to be taken as a whole or be divided up at some future time?
We are not representing the owner of that building,
Just,
just the residential portion is what we're involved with. That building is gonna be separate, it's just gonna
Oh,
be
okay.
subdivided out in its own parcel.
so if I have a question about the other 14 acres, you can answer?
Yes, I mean, today, we're just doing a 2-lot subdivision, but
Okay.
I'm happy to answer anything that the.
Just one question about.
Yep.
I've heard it, and this may be not so. That the amount of fill that was brought in basically just for temporary purposes. It was meant to be moved. Is that still the case? Is that all going to be taken away and reshuffled or done whatever?
From my recollection, the fill was brought in to actually help grade it for potentially future development. Maybe I misread something somewhere, but that's my recollection.
That's my understanding as well, so it's planning to stay.
Correct.
And it probably more being added.
But I think the original, I mean, I'm an old guy, so I'm not so sure, but I'm pretty sure that it was, there were two sets of fill deliveries. First happened about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and then the one that's recent right now. The first one was there, it was just, my understanding was, and that because I was at the meeting, I remember saying it was only for temporary storage, but.
Could
I
be
don't
that,
know.
I wasn't
Okay,
here then, or, yeah.
It could have been, I know we saw the subsequent fill application, I think. Something like that. And I remember, so that came before our board. And I remember the purpose was to grade the site for potentially future development. So it did go before the planning board as well. You're welcome.
I know this is just for the subdivision, so I'm probably misspeaking if I'm talking about, again, the fill. But I know that that parcel, the whole parcel, was one of the 8 or 10 options that the town was looking at for putting the highway department in there. And if you read through why they kind of crossed out some of them, was my understanding that it said in there that fill that had been brought in a while back had to be taken out, had to be removed, and then there was a term, something reworked or something like that. I'm not familiar with the term. Before it could be brought back in again. And conservation wise, I guess I was concerned if the property didn't pass for the highway department to be in there because of this taking the fill out and then reworking it and bringing it back. I'm concerned about residential being. Now, that may have nothing to do with this particular board, but conservation wise, to me, it sounds kind of concerned. And it has nothing to do with, breaking off the part, into the two parcels. But conservation wise, it does seem like that's concern for the project.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't recall seeing any language with that, but we can certainly.
Yeah, it's right in the, as far as why they kind of, besides which the price didn't agree. Buckingham and the town couldn't come up with a mutually agreeable price, but in the right up. And I guess I'm sorry to be confused about, if the parking part, Brian, is that part to the, like east or the right of the dotted line? And that's the village, is that right? So the 4 point some acres has nothing to do with that part, is that right?
Correct. The
So-
4 acres are what's within the town on the left side of that line,
Okay,
but the parcel includes the portion that's in the village too. There's no separate lot line. It's one overall parcel that has lands in both municipalities.
and if the village for some reason, wanted that part to the right of the dotted line, that kind of takes most of all the parking.
They can't do that. The parcel is
I'm sorry.
both the village and the town portions are deeded to this parcel. It's one parcel. There is no 2 separate parcels. It can't be. You can't take the village piece separate from the town piece. It's one parcel right now.
And so you're approving the split of the two,
Just merely the,
even though part of it's.
No, all we're approving, all that's before the planning board for approval is separating out the 18.5 acres from the parent parcel.
makes sense.
Right.
So I would say that there's probably, I would suggest there's gonna be an opportunity to come back when there's more to work with,
Mhm.
to provide additional comments, because certainly
Right,
that.
Okay. thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Any other comments?
So
Anything else?
I'm not sure if this is gonna add any value to your concerns, but the function of the conservation board is an advisory board to the planning board. When it's development is posed, the conservation board is asked to take a look at the plan or proposal based on what is asked or what the intention of the owner is. Our concern is to look at if there's going to be disruption to the community, waterways, traffic,
Right, right.
and et cetera, et cetera. As it is right now, they're just asking for us a division of the overall plot of land.
The two-
There's no development, there's no nothing. So even if there was some stuff that did happen prior to today, that has already been passed.
Yes,
So we can't go back and say you gotta undo that, so to speak. So we need to look at what's going forward. So as of today, it's just a matter of subdividing the two. They've explained where it's in between the city, I mean, the town and the village, but there's no conservation concern at this point in time in terms of disruption to the community. If when they do decide to do the development and they give some details of proposal, at that point in time, it's okay, fine. Well, maybe you don't have enough drainage for the amount of house you're proposing, or it's gonna have a traffic or effect.
Right.
So then you need to have something in place to offset that. At that point in time, then we can say, okay, fine, we don't agree. The builder needs to go back and do X, Y, Z, so that the community is not negatively impacted.
thank you.
Any other comments from the board?
Just one
Please,
question.
yeah.
Alexis over the town board, for the parcel there that's, or the portion of the parcel that's in the village, how many acres is that?
1.2.
Okay, so then just to clarify, so those, total parcel there would be 5.2 acres.
Correct.
Only 4 of which would be in the town.
Correct.
Comments? Right, well, at this point. Safe to say we have approval, conservation board to split this parcel up into two.
We have no concern this time. Based on what's to be presented in front of us.
We're over that, provide those comments. As I mentioned, probably another opportunity, go back when this reaches the next step.
Understand.
And thanks for coming. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you for your time.
You're all welcome to stay for the rest. You're welcome to go tonight. Great. We'll move the schedule around a little bit. We had the Highline Park subdivision. Any representation from that evening?
Now we're
Yeah.
on solar. correct?
If no, then we'll move on to Norbit Solar Farm. Page Street Fishers applicant is requesting a FEMA develop 4.428 AC solar energy facility on 34.93 acres. and Meadowland. So we've been fly with quite a bit of material, if you don't mind just giving us an overview.
Sure. So my name is James Criticos. I'm also with BME Associates, same as Ryan. This is Victor. He's with Northern Solar Farms, the applicant, as well as Sean over here. So we're kind of excited. We're the first solar project in the town as far as we know, and we actually have another one coming up in another couple months. This one's about as straightforward as you can get for a solar project. This is located off of Main Street Fishers, right on the Mendon Victor line. So right to these plans are orientated, so north is to the right of the drawing, so just to our west is the town of Mendon. Basically, what we're coming in to do is build a single site solar farm project, so this is gonna be about 4.4 megawatts. This one has fixed tilt panels, so they don't rotate at all, they're always kind of fixed at the same angle, facing southward with a little bit of an angle up. The site itself is about 35 acres, just shy of that. There's an existing drive off of Main Street Fishers. It's kind of a broken asphalt gravel drive as it is today, and that you can drive right up to about where the property opens up a bit. Then there's kind of like some lawn area, there's a little animal shelter for the adjacent property owner. And then as you continue moving north across the property, the southern or the eastern side of the property is mostly meadow brush. And then as you and then the western side is more of a dense, like thick brush. And then as you move to the very, very northern limits, you get into some older woods, but that's only in like the top, 50 feet or so of the property. The majority of the site is either, open, low grass meadows or very, very thick brush, like almost too hard to walk through. There are some scattered older trees throughout here and there, but again, mainly it's in the very northern limits as you kind of get closer to the thruway, as well as that northwest corner that we aren't doing anything up in. We're basically gonna leave all the older vegetation there. In terms of like the site itself, there are a couple little wetlands on there. The ones up in the northwestern corner, we're leaving alone. Those ones all kind of have little perennial tributaries associated with them. That all drains and then joins with a bunch of other drainage from the west as well as the east, and goes under a giant culvert under the thruway and then off into some other wetlands. So we're really trying to avoid all those perennial streams and things. What you look at the grading plan, you can kind of see where they start to form. So we really kind of just respected that as much as possible. The other three wetlands there are kind of in that open space area on the left side of the page, right as you get to the top of the hill. The larger one, we believe will be jurisdictional in some fashion, but the other two smaller ones we're trying to get non-jurisdictional. We believe they're basically just low pockets of ground that have a little bit of standing water here and there. I believe they're both less than 1/10 of an acre, so we could combine, so we could take them both out and it wouldn't actually cause a permit if for some reason they are regulated. So we are in compliance with all of that. The existing site, basically, we're gonna propose a gravel access drive. We're gonna hold existing grades up the kind of the flag portion of the lot. It's about 10% as it is today. But there are good established side swales with vegetation on each side, so we're gonna ask the town if they'll let us live with a 10.5% road versus the 10% that's normally required, just to try and avoid disturbance to those. There's no reason to mess with those and pull that vegetation just to try and regrade it and then restabilize it. Doesn't make sense. And as it's a private access drive, it's really only service equipment that's gonna get up here after the initial deliveries and things like that from the loaded tractor trailers. We do have a small stormwater facility. We're gonna basically tuck in right as you get to the top of the hill. This is gonna collect runoff from a majority of the new portion of the access drive. Everything obviously to the south of this going down the hill, we're not gonna be able to collect. And then a portion of the solar farm. This is really just to do a tiny bit of attenuation because of the increase in impervious associated with the access drive. The rest of the drainage areas, the analysis points we looked at, it's basically you have one kind of at the south side and then one at the north side that everything goes under the culverts from throughway. The north side, when you do solar projects, you're basically going from like a meadow or brush to a meadow or brush. So there's really not any change in curve numbers. So there isn't really a runoff increase associated with it. A lot of times you'll be going from kind of like some bare earth or agricultural fields to a meadow, so there are some actual benefits. This site is probably gonna be more of a wash because we are going from a brush to, a denser meadow mix. In terms of site development, basically what we do is we come in, we'll have our stabilized construction entrance, we'll come up the access drive, we'll set up our staging area up at the top of the hill. Is already like an existing trail that runs basically north-south through the whole portion of the site where the permanent access drive is gonna be. Once we do that, we'll, clear what we need to, brush it out, basically kind of fine grade it, stabilize it right back. And then at that point, it's really just bringing in the equipment and we kind of work our way out of the project for this one. So we'll basically start at the north end, start installing panels, wiring, and kind of work our way south through the project site. So beyond the initial kind of clearing and grubbing, there really isn't any other, ground disturbance. We're not regrading anything on the site here. As part of a permanent feature of the site, because the topography is a little uneven up here, one of the things to meet the DEC requirements for solar projects is we employ level spreaders at specific locations. Basically anywhere we think the water is going to concentrate, especially with these panels because they're fixed tilt. So you kind of see on the plan here, those darker lines are level spreaders. They kind of follow the contours and they help ensure that the water basically maintains sheet flow as much as possible to give it a chance to, get absorbed by the metals before it eventually will concentrate in the same locations it does today, which is basically you kind of see through those two fingers. Kind of darker shading area there in the northeast corner, that's an area of vegetation that we're planning on stumping. Basically what we do is we don't pull the stumps out of there. It helps, it doesn't really count as ground disturbance if we do that, but we do need to stump them down basically for site angles for the solar panels to make sure that they hit their efficiency numbers. Pretty much everywhere else on the site, the perimeter areas, we're just gonna clear it back to what we need to. Again, it's all brush through most of that area besides that northwestern corner that we're protecting. We do have a little bit of proposed vegetation here on the eastern and then kind of southeastern corner, kind of by the stormwater pond. As part of the project and one of the studies in the packet of materials is a view shed analysis. So we basically look at topography of our site and all the surrounding areas, look at model the panel heights, and then assume there's no vegetation and do a model with vegetation. Where can you see this from? Just to understand, okay, the only place you really can see this is that neighbor that's just south of there, about where the bar scale is. And so there is a landscaping plan later in the set, but basically we're proposing some vegetation kind of right there to buffer that existing. We are leaving a lot of the brush, which they also have on their site. As of today, if you go out there, even with leaf off conditions, you really can't see it. That brush is 20 feet high and incredibly dense. If you guys do visit the site, again, there's a trail that runs basically north-south through the whole thing. And then there's a kind of a loop that runs around the northern portion of it. If you go to the very, very northern portion of the trail, you can kind of sneak through and then you can get into some of the older woods, and that's what's in that north corner. And there's an old like deteriorated chain link fence along the property line to kind of help orient yourself. But in terms of that, it's really pretty straightforward projects, these solar farms. We don't have any water or sewer or any other utility. So it's really just for this one, it's just a come in, build the road and stabilize and build the panels, so.
And you don't think there'll be any need for further maintenance of the brush area after the construction is completed?
No, so basically it'll all be perimeter stuff. I mean, if it becomes an issue in terms of site visualization stuff, they might do some maintenance to trim it back, but the brush itself isn't usually the issues. It's more of the 40-foot tall trees that, and basically what we try to do is hold about, I think it's like 100 feet east and west of the panels if we can. But some cases we can't do that, obviously property constraints, things like that.
The brush won't grow above the panels if left.
No, so we'll clear, everything within the clearing limits, we'll clear it and it'll all be established as like a meadow, like a meadow mix. And they use specific ones for pollinators for, the bees and things.
So you do replant that with the meadow
Yeah,
grass?
we'll remove all the brush within like our clearing limits and brush hogging limits and then turn it into a true meadow.
Then you mentioned that we know what I mean was buffer to the neighbors, so just one place you're worried about buffering.
Yep, and we actually employ quite a bit bigger setback than what's required by code. The way the solar panels are viewed in the Victor code, they're based on the underlying zoning districts for accessory structures. So I believe our setback's actually like 5 feet or something, but we pull them back because we need an access driver on the perimeter with inside our fence limits, and then we pull it back even further because we want to make sure the panels are set up far enough away from what we can clear the vegetation. It doesn't make sense for us to put a panel 5 feet from the property line if we've got a tree right next to it, because the efficiency gets so bad there. So we provide a lot more buffer than what's required to the perimeters. And then basically, there's really not any neighbors or anybody else close to us that doesn't also have, a good level of vegetation on their property also.
I don't know, this isn't, I don't think in our purview, but I'm just kind of curious because we haven't had a project like this. What's the life of solar farm? Are these for 10 years, 30?
So what we usually say is around like 25 to 35 years is what we estimate the current panel life would last to until there's certain amount of annual degradation. So we can project that out and we usually say around 35 years, the panels will be operating at a diminished capacity to such a point where it would make sense to either repower the system or decommission it, depending on the circumstances at the time. We do anticipate that if we were to do that 35 years in the future, that the actual footprint of the facility would be so much smaller because the panel efficiency even year over year increases now. So 35 years in the future, the facility footprint would probably be substantially less.
To generate the same level?
Generate the same amount of power, right? We wouldn't benefit from putting more efficient panels there and generating more power because we're constrained for what we can produce from an output perspective based on what the utility infrastructure is able to handle.
Okay. Makes sense.
The only other thing is you mentioned mature trees on one part that you have to take down completely.
So there are some mature trees, basically you see where the gate is to the fence. There's some pine trees that run along the central access drive. Those are probably the only true mature trees that we're taking down. But they're not natural. They're clearly planted by somebody a long time ago along that access drive.
Okay.
And then just in the very northwest corner of the site is where we're preserving as much of the olds or woods as we can. But like I said, mostly it's just brush. And if you go out there, you guys you'll understand exactly what we're talking about.
So how much can you give a guess with how much you're actually removing between the area that you're stubbing and the perimeter that you're clearing up?
So we had estimated there was only about 1.2, 1.6 acres of actual mature woods on the property. And that's all, like I said, it's in that northern portion of the site. I don't know, I wish I brought an aerial to show, but
You have to take down all 1.6 acres?
you see there's a little trail that loops around in the northern portion of the site. It's kind of loops right in through here. Basically, the woods are basically like a line up here.
Okay.
So most of what we're clearing and what we're looking to remove is just a brush or already meadow. Yeah, so if you look at that map, you can almost see where there's kind of a long linear line and then it kind of loops around like a weird oblong shape just south of that dark area. So basically what's north to the right of that is kind of the old woods. And then right at that point where it's really close to that trail, that's where it kind of transitions between the old woods and the new stuff. So that's what we kind of used as a reference point when we were walking the site to try and establish, okay, this is where we really want to stay out of if we can. And then the dark area is what we're stumping, which is kind of what we think is probably part of that older woods that we need to just clear for visual sight lines.
Wow, yeah.
Just curious, how far is it through it?
So the throughway property, we actually see where it angles just a tiny
Yeah.
bit in the bottom right. That's actually the right of way. That's the pull off area.
Oh, gotcha.
Right
Okay.
there. So the actual travel, yeah, you can see where it kind of starts to pull off there. So you can see the travel lanes. They're pretty close, but there's also that kind of wedge triangle piece there, that's all old woods. We're not touching any of that. That's all owned by somebody else or freeway themselves, I'm not sure.
You have to limit the disturbance like any other site around the water that you were commenting, you're gonna stay away from that corner right up there. Do you have to limit, do you have to
I mean,
mark it like
yeah,
you would with
we're gonna be standard New York State DEC stormwater permit, general notice of intent, so we have post-construction stormwater and erosion controls, erosion control plan, sequence, basically outlining kind of how I described that we're gonna build the site, so, perimeter silt fence, check dams, stabilization measures in accordance with the general permit, so.
we're used to for
Yes. Yeah.
houses or anything else there? Okay.
Good shape.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like a really thorough project. You've done your homework, obviously, so.
Perfect.
I don't think we have any additional comments.
Excellent.
We'll move this on. What's your next step?
So we'll be at the planning board for site plan and special use permit, and it's kind of a one-stop process with them. We are doing a coordinated review, so they'll be run them next week.
Yes.
I think they moved us up a meeting because of the 12th, the primaries, I think are happening during the meeting we would have been on. So yes, we'll be at there, they'll declare lead agency and then, we'll obviously get all the rest of the town staff comments, respond to all those and kind of just do the normal process.
This is great. Well, thanks for coming. Good luck with it.
Yeah, like I said, we'll see you guys in a month or two.
Can I ask?
Oh, sure.
I'm sorry about.
No,
Please, how long is the road in the length of that road that comes into the?
The existing drive right now is about 700-ish feet or so of broken gravel asphalt.
Okay.
Give or take, it basically goes to that existing animal shelter, because I think they use it to get in there. But that's on the neighbor.
I understand, I read that a solar farm like this produces a tremendous amount of glare.
We, as part of the application materials to the town, we do a glit and glare study. So we basically look at different observation points, which we actually derive from the view shed study. So like we did an observation point from the resident's house at like the second floor observation. We look at all the drives and roads around. We look at different airports and airplane approaches within 10 miles because that's what anything over that they basically deem as not doesn't cause any impacts to pilots. And really the only impacts anyways are at the air traffic control towers, which we're well away from any of those here. So as part of that, we look at that. They look at different like the green and yellow glares, and just, model how many hours a year their different observation points are actually impacted by. Basically, you can't see this from anywhere, besides the one residential neighbor that we have that we're screening from. So this project particularly isn't gonna have any sort of glare impact, specifically on the thruway either, because all the panels are tilted south already and they don't rotate. So any of the glare to the thruway is not existent basically.
What angle are they? Would you know?
I wanna say it's like 20%, 30%, I'm not sure. Somewhere around there.
I'm sorry to ask you these questions. I know you want to go,
No, you're fine.
but I'm curious. These panels, they're in boxes, right? I mean, the solar collector sits in boxes. They're not just exposed. They're covered with the metal, with the glass. Is that correct? Or?
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's like a post driven in the ground. It's on like a
Right.
center racking row, and then they basically mount like the different types of panels to that at an
Right.
angle.
What I'm getting at, I'm sorry. Let's say it's 30 years now and you can pull the actual collector out of those coverings, would you know?
I mean,
And
I
then
would assume
replace
they
them?
won't be replacing them with the similar one that they would just plug and play at that point. I think it would be probably, I mean, maybe they could reuse the racking
sure there'd be
system,
more.
but it's
Yeah.
probably a little more extensive to re-energize the site.
Right, we would, that would be a consideration at the time, I would imagine, but I imagine should we be using new modules, if the system were to be repowered in the future, we would probably also replace the racking along with that.
Yeah, I can't imagine
Is
that
most
after
of it
30 years.
recyclable from this?
Yes, and we have a decommissioning and recycling plan that was submitted as part of the application as well.
And where is this energy going? Just, I mean, being a solar farm, usually sometimes they rent, you can buy for yourself. Is that how this works, that you are able to purchase individually, or it just goes into?
Yes, so this would, the classification for this solar facility is a CDG facility, community distributed generation solar facility, which is a designation that is set forth by the New York State Public Service Commission. So CDG facilities are different than some of the other like large scale solar developments that you see in New York State. Those are called 94C projects. And they hook directly into the transmission side of the utility grid, which is kind of like the higher level, and those usually get pumped to high load parts of the state like New York City. CDG projects hook into the distribution side of the utility grid. In this case would be RG&E. And then the power that's produced at that facility can be sold to eligible RG&E customers within the town it's in or surrounding communities as well. And that is generally at a 5% discount.
I got you. I understand. Okay.
I just had one question. Looking at the map in the upper right-hand corner, what is the street that's like directly, that'd be, you said that was north, so that would be east. Is that Phillips that's directly, or is Phillips over further, which
The
is,
driveway's off Main Street.
Yeah, we're right off Main Street.
Right. I know, right, I know that's, the driveway comes off Main, but directly south of where the entrance is. What,
Old Dutch is like kind of like
Oh.
almost
Oh,
an intersection with
okay.
it.
so it's a lot further west than I was.
Yeah, it's all, it's,
Yeah.
we're right on the town line.
Okay, gotcha, thank you.
Thanks for your comments. That was Victor.
Victor,
Victor
yes.
and James,
Yep.
thank you for coming.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you guys. If you have any questions, I know, you guys know how to reach me. so.
Appreciate it.
Always.
Have a good night.
You too.
All right, we will move along to the third item on our agenda, Highline Park subdivision sketch. Applicant is requesting acknowledgement of a completed application to develop under the clustering provisions for 26 for sale townhome lots, an HOA lot and one lot consisting of the 3 apartment buildings. This is the first step, a major subdivision, the acknowledgement of a completed application considered at this meeting. Comments, thoughts, questions, the board.
As far as I know, it is a completed application, so. You're complete today as well.
Got the plan look good.
I never read that one.
Good news we did for you.
Full disclosure.
Right, any comments?
Not on that. I think we do need to do the, is there a part 2
That's fine.
on maybe?
Outside. Oh, I didn't see that.
Good for you.
Tackle
We saw
the-
that.
Yeah,
We'll,
maybe next time you should highlight it so you'll see it.
exactly. All right, let's acknowledge the completed application first for Highmark Park subdivision. So that will tackle any issues with that. Nope, board, all right. It's off the list. We'll then move on to the Rossi subdivision. Do you want to tackle this now or should we do so? Live?
Sometimes we do them live, sometimes we just fill them out afterwards.
Let's do the latter.
Yeah, I mean,
It's-
there's no
No impact, obviously.
earth movement at the moment, so.
Right, last but not least, approval of the December 19th, 23 minutes. And was not here, so you can't comment on those.
You'll find me with the adjustments that were made.
Yeah, thanks. So I make a motion that we accept the minutes.
And I second that.
Favor?
Aye.
Abstentions?
No abstentions.
Correct.
Correct.
All right, minutes from December 19th, 23 are approved. All right, any other comments?
Anything from the
Board?
board we should be aware of?
I think the town, well, sorry, it's been 3 months since I've been on the board. It's just so, since you don't know me, started in January, got elected back in November. I replaced Ed Kohovic on the town board, retired. Live over, live in the village, and I like to say I'm the only other town board member other than Jack, who's a village resident as well, so kind of a double duty there. And I think before that, I was on the zoning board of appeals for a year. Really enjoyed that. The town's been going through, as many people know, the property purchase over on Brace Road. We have not set a date yet for permissive referendum vote. That has we had some residents pass a petition that will now bring that to a full townwide vote on yes, no on approving the purchase of the land. That will be probably sometime in mid to late April, based on the number of days that we can have min max after the petition was put in. We're planning on having a date released at the second March meeting. We're gonna be having like some open houses over the highway garage as well, so some more information to come on that as time goes on. I think if there's any other, that's been the big exciting thing that everyone's been talking about. I think second big exciting thing has been the news about Chick-fil-A that the planning board got to see. There's been no approvals, there's been no denials, it's just been they came to introduce themselves sort of thing, and I think every single news station, newspaper from here to, 50 miles surrounding decided to cover it. So maybe one day you'll be able to have, your chicken right there, and also get your shopping done at Eastview Mall.
Barnes and Noble.
And Barnes and Noble just recently opened. Yeah, we've got a lot of new businesses in the town. We have a dance studio. I think that was the first ribbon cutting while I was on the town board, like January 3rd. Over at the Phoenix Mills Plaza, we've got a boutique right here on Main Street. I think there's some news about things going into City Tavern, and some other businesses over coming to town. Anything else? We're hiring a full-time code enforcement officer, so if you or anyone you may know is interested in becoming a full-time code enforcement officer for the town of Victor, we are very much looking. You seem like you've been volunteering.
Yeah. I didn't realize that it was a part-time position.
Yeah, so we previously had someone who was full-time. Unfortunately, they're having some health issues, they're not available right now, and we had advertised it as seasonal, but we kind of decided, just with the way buildings and even not even just new construction, renovations, et cetera, has been going, and just even enforcement, not just applications, another full-time person, really.
And that position is already advertised on the town board?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you or anybody else would like to be on be a code enforcement officer, please apply.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks a
If
lot.
you got any questions?
Appreciate it. All right, we will call this meeting at 7:15. Thank you all for coming. Cool. Thanks for your comments.
Thank you. Thank you for
I'm
your
sure we'll see you again.
You will.
The next iteration.
I made note of your comment on the fill being
Yeah.
from,
Yeah.
back when the highway department, so we
Yeah.
can try to dig